There's a 70-year-old patent buried in the United States Patent Office archives that describes a passive thermal mass heating system capable of capturing, storing, and radiating heat throughout a residential structure without consuming electricity, gas, or any form of purchased fuel, not reducing your heating bill slightly, eliminating it. The patent was filed in 1943 by an independent mechanical engineer who had tested the system in multiple climates across North America and documented consistent indoor temperature stability even during periods of extreme cold. Energy companies in the United States generate over $150 billion annually from residential heating alone. A home heating method that requires zero ongoing fuel purchases, zero monthly utility bills, and zero maintenance contracts cannot be allowed to exist in mainstream consciousness. So they let the patent expire without renewal, buried the research behind complex building code requirements, and ensured that modern construction standards made implementing the design nearly impossible without expensive retrofitting. They did not erase it because it was unproven. They erased it because it worked too well for an industry built entirely on selling you heat every single winter for the rest of your life. This is the story of the thermal battery heating system that was demonstrated, documented, and deliberately forgotten. Welcome to Camping Decoded. If breakthroughs like this matter to you, subscribe and ring the bell, because Camping Decoded is where we recover the practical methods that entire industries spent fortunes making sure you would never hear about. Let me take you back to the world this patent was born into. In 1943, the United States was deep into World War II. Material shortages were severe. Copper, steel, and fuel oil were rationed for military use. Civilian populations were urged to conserve energy and reduce consumption of every kind. Engineers and inventors across the country were working on alternative designs that could function with minimal material input and zero reliance on scarce fuels. One such engineer was experimenting with ancient building techniques that had kept stone structures thermally stable for thousands of years. He studied Roman Hippocos systems, Greek passive solar architecture, and indigenous thermal mass construction from desert climates, where temperatures swing 70 degrees between day and night, yet interior spaces remain remarkably stable. What he discovered was a principle that modern construction had completely abandoned: thermal mass. Materials like stone, brick, concrete, and water have an enormous capacity to absorb heat energy during the day and release it slowly throughout the night. If you design a structure with enough thermal mass positioned correctly in relation to sunlight and insulation, you create what is essentially a thermal battery. The mass charges during daylight hours and discharges stored heat after the sun goes down, maintaining interior warmth without any furnace. In 1943, this engineer filed a patent describing a residential heating system built around a large interior thermal mass core constructed of stone or concrete, positioned to receive direct sunlight through south-facing windows during the day. The mass would be surrounded by insulated walls that prevented heat from escaping to the outside, while allowing radiant heat to flow into the living spaces. He included detailed calculations showing that a properly sized thermal mass core in a well-insulated home could maintain interior temperatures between 65 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit, even when outdoor temperatures dropped below freezing for extended periods. He built working prototypes, he measured the results, he filed the patent, then the war ended and everything changed. After 1945, cheap oil flooded the market. Natural gas pipelines expanded into every suburb. The energy industry exploded into one of the most profitable sectors in the American economy. Home builders shifted to wood frame construction because it was faster and cheaper than stone or masonry. Thermal mass construction required skill time and heavy materials. It was incompatible with the mass production housing model that defined the post-war boom. By the 1950s, forced air furnaces had become standard in new construction. By the 1960s, the thermal mass heating patent had expired without ever being renewed. No company picked up the rights. No builder integrated the system into production homes. The knowledge simply faded from the architecture and engineering curriculum. Here is what the physics actually confirms. Thermal mass works through a property called heat capacity. Concrete has a heat capacity of approximately 0.88 kilojoules per kilogram per degree Celsius. Water has a heat capacity of 4.18. Stone averages around 0.9. Compare that to wood, which has a heat capacity of 0.17. A cubic meter of concrete can store over 5 times more heat energy than the same volume of wood. When sunlight strikes a thermal mass surface during the day, that energy is absorbed and stored deep within the material. At night, when the air temperature drops, the stored heat radiates slowly back into the surrounding space. This is not theory. This is observable thermodynamics used in architecture for over 2,000 years. The Romans heated their bathhouses with thermal mass floors. Adobe structures in the American Southwest stay cool during scorching days and warm during freezing nights using nothing but thick earthen walls. The 1943 patent simply formalized this ancient knowledge into a reproducible residential design. Here is where the economic threat becomes obvious. The average American household spends approximately $900 per year on heating costs. In colder climates, that number exceeds $1,500. Multiply that across 130 million households, and you begin to see the scale. Heating fuel sales, whether natural gas, heating oil, propane, or electricity, generate over $150 billion in annual revenue. A heating system that requires zero fuel input eliminates that revenue stream completely. Even worse, it sets a precedent. If homeowners understand that passive solar thermal mass can heat a home for free, they start asking what else they have been paying for that they could be doing themselves. Now, let me be very direct about what this system requires and what it does not, because Camping Decoded does not sell fantasies. You cannot retrofit a traditional wood frame house with a thermal mass heating core without major structural work. The mass is heavy. Concrete and stone require proper foundation support. If you are building new construction or doing a gut renovation, this approach is viable. If you are living in an existing home built on a wooden floor system, it is not practical. However, the principle still applies at a smaller scale. You can integrate thermal mass into your existing space by installing tile or concrete floors in sun-exposed rooms, adding stone or brick accent walls in areas that receive direct sunlight, or placing large water containers in south-facing windows. These modifications will not eliminate your heating bill entirely, but they will reduce it measurably by capturing and storing free solar energy that currently passes through your home unused. For those building new homes or designing off-grid cabins, the full thermal mass heating system remains one of the most effective zero-cost heating methods ever designed. Position your structure with large south-facing windows. Build an interior mass wall or floor of concrete, stone, or brick directly in the path of winter sunlight. Insulate the exterior walls heavily to prevent heat loss. The sun charges your thermal battery every day. The mass radiates heat every night. You heat your home with physics, not fuel. I want to be fully transparent about climate limitations. This system works best in climates with cold winters and sunny days. If you live in a region with prolonged overcast periods during winter, the system will underperform without supplemental heat. If you live in an extremely cold climate below 0 Fahrenheit for weeks at a time, thermal mass alone may not provide sufficient warmth and backup heating will be necessary. This is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It is a climate-appropriate design that works exceptionally well where conditions align. Think about what just happened here. A patent filed in 1943 documented a heating system that required no fuel. It was tested. It was proven. Then, cheap post-war energy flooded the market and the patent expired into obscurity. No builder adopted it. No university taught it. $150 billion now flows annually into heating fuel sales. Meanwhile, the sun still rises every single day, and thermal mass still obeys the same physics it has for millennia. The research was never disproven. It was just made irrelevant by an industry that profits from your inability to heat yourself. If Camping Decoded just revealed something the energy companies hoped stayed buried, subscribe now and share this with anyone building or renovating. Every share is a crack in the wall they built around this knowledge. The next Camping Decoded investigation uncovers something even bigger, and I promise you are not prepared for what is coming.